For continuous air and water barriers on your next build, choose Zip System Ceiling Solutions. Seal tough jobs in a flash.
Hello, UnBuild Podcast. Steve Basic, Jake Bruton, and Peter Yost live from the UnBuild Studios here, bringing you our latest episode. Today, why am I so excited? Because we're talking about the word affordable, right? It gets tossed around in our industry all the time. How do we make buildings more affordable? We need to come up with solutions for affordable housing. How much does that cost? Wow, that isn't affordable. We hear all these comments all the time. And today, the three of us are going to sort it all out. We're bringing it down. And by the end of this podcast, you will have it all figured out.
I'm glad I'm here.
That was quite the boast. I hope that we can help people figure it out.
Well, you guys are partners, so I only have 33% of the loss.
Andy's already done. Andy's already done 90% of his talking.
Set the expectations here and then slide right into the.
No, so it's true. So the question is affordable, right? Yeah. So the first question is, what does affordable mean? And we know what the word affordable means, but does it mean affordable to build the first time, affordable to operate, affordable to buy,
affordable to maintain,
because all of these are huge question marks or huge relationships to the idea of, is that affordable? And one of the things that comes to mind that always sticks in me is, we were at a meeting one time with Joe Stieberg at Building Science Corporation. We were doing an affordable housing demonstration project out in Colorado. And Joe brought up the idea of, we're going to put ducted air systems in and, put the heating and AC would be air. And everybody's like, well, wait a minute. This is supposed to be affordable housing.
We can't add AC
we can't
to the
add
bill.
Air conditioning. That's a luxury. And Joe says, well, no. It's part of the affordable housing. And they said, no, we don't put AC units in that are AC ducted systems. He goes, okay, so let me get this straight. We're going to put a ducted system in, or we're going to put a heating system in, and then you're going to have everybody go and buy window shakers, which are far less efficient, far more costly to operate, and they're going to get exchanged every 5 or 7 years. Mm-hmm. And you deem that as an affordable approach to the housing, as opposed to just giving them a very efficient AC system that's contained within the building envelope and conditioned space. And Joe was spot on, and they totally missed the boat on what affordable was.
Yeah. And so you're bringing up the idea that affordable doesn't mean one thing. Because if we were just talking about affordable to build, it would be 2x4 walls with the fiberglass bat insulation, vinyl siding, no weather resistant barrier. Like, it would be bare bottom, early 90s track house.
Well, let me cut
if we're
to
just
the
talking
chase
about
for you.
Affordable to build.
Let me cut to the chase for you. I'm just going to redefine affordable in that perception.
Okay.
Right? What's the cheapest, crappiest house I can build? Right?
Yeah.
Because that's what you're asking.
Yep.
What's the cheapest, crappiest house I can build that meets code and stands up for at least the next 5 years?
But yet, if we say affordable to operate, affordable to live in, condition, heat, cool, those sorts of things, we're talking about beyond passive house. That's not affordable to build for the masses.
Well, I
right?
guess it depends on what you're referencing when you say, what is that? What's the level of affordability, right? So if an average house, code built house or crappy house costs $500 a year to heat and cool, if I cut that number to $300, is it more affordable? Right? Because that $200 I can then translate into my monthly payment,
your mortgage,
and I can make it more affordable to buy. Right? So I made it more affordable to maintain and operate, but I took that money and also made it more affordable to buy. So I'm killing two birds with one stone by building a better house, right? And the other thing that always comes to mind when you talk about that, the crappiest house to build, if you think it cost a lot of money the first time, imagine what it costs to fix those problems and the second time, because it's coming from a building investigative world. There's probably no solution the second time around that is cheaper than the initial solution to do it right.
When we talk about affordable housing, there's also this issue of, I guess, sort of the boundary conditions of the problem. Like, are we talking about manufactured housing? Does that sort of equal affordable housing? Because that's a very different category of structure. Are we talking about affordable multifamily structures or affordable single family detached? If you change
building type definitely changes into how much do I have to pay for this and what do I get? What's my return on that investment?
I was listening to a piece on the radio the other day about how for a lot of mobile home parks, what's happening is the people who own the land are being bought up by large corporations, and the first thing they do is raise the rent on the land. And so it's not the housing that's not affordable anymore, it's the rent they're paying for the location of the building.
Trailer.
Exactly. And they can't afford to move, because taking a mobile home and moving it to a different location is a really big one-time expense. So they're kind of caught, right? They're in the most affordable housing they can find.
I can pay the extra $25 a month, or I can pay the $5,000 to move it, which I don't have.
And in the article, there are a whole bunch of people. We don't have either. We can't afford the increase in the land rent, and we also can't afford to move the unit.
Right.
And this is a big issue for HUD, Housing, Urban and Development, because a lot of the loans that went out as part of the whole, what's the name of the big package for
EIDL
COVID,
or the
COVID, that
COVID
package.
relief, yeah.
A lot of the renter relief, that money actually went to some major sort of banking corporations as opposed to going to
huge conglomerates of rental
and there
apartments.
was a part of the law that made it difficult to get that money through to the actual people who were owning the manufactured housing. But anyway, we often have a whole bunch of different flavors of affordable when we're talking about different types of housing as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly initial cost it's the first hurdle that you come across. So obviously it's the one that's talked about the most. It's probably the biggest one of it too, right? Because nothing probably exceeds the cost of the house after you get over that hurdle, right? Maintenance and all of that. Yeah, they play a role in it, but the initial cost
takes a long time to get to $500,000 worth of electricity, water, and maintenance.
And repainting the house and all that good stuff. So, but the idea of what makes a house affordable, is that a code built house? Is it something that's, a pretty good house, something with some elevated standards? I mean, for me personally, I don't think a code built house is necessarily an acceptable reference point. I mean, it's the bottom of the barrel. So you can say what you want, like, oh, there's a lot of these houses, we can build it for X amount of dollars a square foot, but you're really saying, I build the least acceptable option.
One of the probably strongest building performance-based conferences or events for many, many years was affordable comfort, right? So that was the connection between, well, when we talk about building a house that delivers, essential shelter, are we talking about a house that, includes a long-term investment in indoor air quality, thermal comfort? There's a really cool program in Vermont where they're linking increases in building performance with reduced trips to the emergency room for things as simple as asthma attacks. And sort of, if you look at the overall costs of lower performing housing, one of the most expensive elements of living is dealing with healthcare. And so
And the toxicity of cheap materials.
right. So they're saying if we draw the box a bit bigger to include, affordable health care, a large part of that could be, well, if you improve the performance of the buildings and significantly improve the indoor air quality, look at what you're doing for the cost of affordable health care.
And that probably even extends into if you make better choices on building materials, you probably don't have to clean them with as harsh of cleaners, which also relate to the toxicity and health.
The other fascinating thing about this program is that they went and looked at trips to the emergency room, particularly for elderly. And one of the most common trips to the emergency room in elderly, affordable housing situations is tripping hazards. So when the home auditor goes in...
I'm so happy you're talking about building a single-story house.
I was right in the middle of the story, Jay. And you know what happens with old people if you interrupt them? They lose track of what
You were
they're
talking about
So
when
what did you
people
have for lunch
tripping.
yesterday?
I think you were talking about LSD and old people tripping.
Rose.
Oh, no.
Well, how does that joke go? Rose.
Yeah, that's my favorite joke that you hate. What I'm saying is that when they send in the auditors for energy performance, they have a short list of tripping hazards they look for. And all it's saying is you can get that person into the house and you're trying to improve their overall affordable profile. Well, with elderly, a lot of it is eliminate the tripping hazards because that's why they end up in the emergency room. Who knew that you could connect
Affordable
blower
housing.
doors and tripping hazards? I trip over my blower door all the time.
All right. So, I'm trying to.
Am I derailing?
Is it?
You're derailing.
So are we
me.
getting to a point where we say it's a balancing act?
I think it's a balancing act, but I think, the code being the least acceptable, right? Does that mean the code should increase in what we do? I think the
Probably.
European codes are probably far more harsher. Not harsher is probably not a good word.
Stringent.
More stringent, right? I think, isn't it Belgium or somebody that has passive house as their building code, or we're working towards that? And I don't think we need to go there, but I think any house that we build today that say has an air change of 5.0 or higher is criminal activity at this point. With the amount of information and materials and stuff we have available, we shouldn't do that. And the fact that we ask people to measure and they throw up in arms about, what do you mean to measure and I got to do a blower door on this? Yeah, well, we should understand,
Trust
I think,
but verify.
a minimum, trust but verify. And we should have that minimum of what we know. And to me, that's affordable. Getting it down into, 5.0 I think is reasonable. I'm being extremely reasonable, but I think that number should really be like 3.0. Right? And that we should have that number there. To me, now we're starting to talk affordable, right? Because
And when you say 5 or 3, you mean air changes per hour, 50 pascals?
Yes, the blower door metric, exactly. But I think that's just one of those things, right? And it's, have been doing this for as long as I have. I don't see a huge economic increase to ensure that we get below 5 or even 3 in building the house. I don't see that. I think that's something that is pretty easily done. Bringing all the mechanicals inside the conditioned space.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that if there are losses, at least the losses are to the favor of the building.
I had a conversation with a builder yesterday. He texted me pictures of some ductwork that they spray foamed. And he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, it's open cell foam. First of all, it's not closed cell. If you really want to be great at this, use the closed cell. But if you really want to be really amazing about stopping that leakage and keeping it inside the envelope, why don't we just not put it in the attic?"
Right. Or
he was
wrap
like,
the
well-
attic around it.
Yeah. He's like, "Well, we thought about that.
Well, you didn't think long
Didn't
enough.
spend
and you
enough
didn't
time
think
on
hard
it
enough.
then." Because I haven't built anything since, 2015.
Yeah. But we toured that one house. Remember the house in Houston? It was a new house. It was a builder. And his stuff was out in the front attic of a cape. And the ductwork ran down the outside of that gate.
It started inside the house, ran outside the house, the whole length of this, and that was facing south. So it was like, if you could think of a better way to solar heat your air conditioning ducts, I don't know what it would be.
I mean, I jokingly made the joke, you're better off if you just ran it outside the building, up and across the top of the roof. It probably would have been cooler. Because when it's 100 degrees outside, it's 150 in that attic in Houston. So you would have been better if you just ran it outside. But these are the dumb things that we do when we sit here and we contemplate. I mean, for as long as, and it's probably 3 times as long for you, but as long as I can remember, we've always talked about how do we get affordable. My first week at Building Science Corporation, I'm sure there were conversations that I heard on the phone about affordable housing and how do we get there. And it seems to be a perpetual conversation that it's a carrot in front of the horse. And we just keep going down the road, but we never get the carrot and we never get there, right? And I don't know if we can get there. Maybe it is a carrot in front of the horse on an endless road.
Well, I think the more that we connect various aspects of what housing provide, shelter, improved health conditions, taking operating costs and factoring them into first cost, all these things are going to help with.
And I think part of it is the people that are willing to design and build the crappy stuff. Maybe you need to turn the corner a little and elevate your line in the sand, if you will, and not be willing to just do it or design the house and then have the builder say, or you do whatever you want, and then the builder builds to the least common denominator possible. And then we end up with a house that gets challenged. But the interesting thing for me is when we did building investigations at Building Science, like most of the building investigations that I remember, they weren't on like habitat houses, right? We're talking like go to Chicago, $10 million glass house that has water management problems and comfort problems. And that house is clearly not affordable,
right?
But it had these
neither are the issues
durability problems and such that people just kind of ignored. And I think at some point the idea of being affordable needs to translate somehow to the consumer to understand what is a better decision that they can then force the designer and builder to move in that direction so that the industry does change by those that hold the wallet or the checkbook, however you want to look at it.
We often try to draw parallels with the auto industry, but if you think about the performance of affordable, cars and improvements in energy standards, mileage per gallon, but just safety standards too. I mean, we seem to be fine with raising those standards for a different type of technology. And here we have a product that lasts way longer than any vehicle.
It's the biggest investment any of us will ever make in our lives.
So if we're ever looking for a place to make this work, it would be with buildings.
Yeah, and for some reason, we choose not to, or it's always on somebody else's shoulders than your shoulders. Like the homeowner says, oh, I'll just rely on the architect or the designer to figure that out. The architect or designer says, oh, I'll rely on the builder to figure that out. The builder says, well, I'll just use these materials because the manufacturer's got it figured out and the building inspector's happy, so we must have done it. And we're kind of there.
Isn't that
but it's
how
not,
it goes?
But it's not truly affordable. And the perception of what is affordable, right, is a huge one, because people always say when I show a project or we post something, well, how much was that a square foot?
Yeah.
Where is your baseline coming from? Where is that founded?
Yeah.
Right? Is it $200 a square foot? Is it $150? Oh, out here in Utah, we build for like $150 a square foot. Well, but what does that get me? Is that crappiest code approved structure that you're talking there?
Are you doing a high performance home
Or
that has low energy bills?
Yeah. Are
and
you
is super
doing
durable?
something that is elevated? Do you do a blower door test and verify it with that number? Right? Because if you don't, then I don't quite think that that's necessarily where you need to be, should be, and hopefully not where you want to be. And what is interesting, thanks to people like Building Science Corporation, getting that message out, the latest code revisions have really addressed some building science issues. So they're regurgitating that information that we've gotten and translating it into, it's kind of like you get a hurricane, you look at the building, how did it fall apart? You go back and say, from now on, we have to build buildings like this. Well, we're getting this information and we know buildings have been built crappy. And so how do we improve the code to move away from that and in a better direction? And for the first time in the last couple revisions, I think the code is still, they need to do more with it. But I think they've done quite a bit as far as understanding how that interacts, the building science and this idea of affordable and comfortable and healthy. I mean, does affordable just mean cost, or does it mean, like you were trying to point out, healthier environments?
Well,
right? More comfortable environments.
And I don't think our listeners are going to be surprised to hear that we think that if you can't connect building performance to affordability, then you've totally missed the boat.
Yep.
But we're not talking about boats. We're talking about houses. I got a little confused.
I got confused too.
I really want to talk about houseboats, but that's really going a little too far.
This ship is sinking.
You're the host. Send us home.
No, but when it comes to affordable, I think, I don't know if we ever get there, because I think I literally do think it's this carrot in front of the horse on an endless road.
Probably not in our careers.
That we're trotting down the road and we're just, everybody's going to have their opinion on what they think affordable is, because it really isn't clearly defined, and there's so many aspects of it that it's real easy to become the kind of dominant inquisitor or dominant, like, well, you should really do this, and why aren't you doing that? And it's real easy to be the person that just cops out and says, well, the code says I only have to do this, right? But the reality is a simple thing like air tightness. If you're building the simplest of houses, even affordable ones, and you're insulating your attic with cellulose, the cost to go from R50 to R70 is negligible. The truck's already there. It's already loaded. It's a couple more bags of cellulose and another 2 hours of the guys there to make that decision. That's a really cheap one. And it's just, part of it too is it's business as usual, and we don't take the time to consciously challenge what we're doing.
Well, you've heard me say this before, but that 50 to 70, the R value in the attic, that's not going to meet a payback, right? And so if you always try to have the operational savings justify the long-term investment in the value of the building, no, you get your money back when you sell that building for a higher price because it's higher performance. Don't put all the burden of that.
Yeah, not everything's return on investment in a bill form.
We don't do that with anything else about the way buildings work. The only thing we apply this payback standard to is energy improvements. Even though in a long-term good, like a building, the return comes when you sell it. So it's not just payback of operations.
People putting exotic countertops. They don't say, what's my return on investment for those countertops? No, I want that. So why shouldn't you want better air quality?
And they will get the return on the investment if they sell it. I mean, if those beautiful countertops are still there, that certainly would be part of the buying price or selling price.
Yeah. And so, I'm going to close it out, but I'm going to close it out kind of coming around the backside at you. For 30 years, I've been doing this. And what I have personally found is that I have almost every client is willing to spend at least a little bit more money when they're educated and understanding what I'm asking them to do.
Fair.
Right? So I think part of this being affordable is that for those that know need to share it with those that don't know. And we need to lift all the boats.
Well, I like that you said there's a bit of a stick, which is raising the codes, and the carrot is to educate so that people understand they're getting more value.
So there you go. Now you know everything. See, we did it. I think we were successful. Anyways, Steve Basic, UnBuild Podcast. Good friends Jake and Pete. We're closing it out live from the UnBuild studios. Until next time, that was all about affordable.